Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That's Not Real Trek, right here on The Conflux. It is a Conflux exclusive, and this is episode 5. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. Directly below me is the beautiful co-host type person that just randomly comes in, and I bother her with all of my ramblings, and that is short and sweet. And today we are watching Discovery Season 1, Episode 9, Into the Forest I Go, and Episode 10, Despite Yourself. Um, so as we mentioned in at the end of previous week's episode, the Discovery crew is about to take a hard left turn into weird shit, and that will be the overruling theme for the rest of the season. So are we ready?
Ready for the weird shit? Yeah.
Ready for the weird shit. All right, here we
Ready.
go.
Always ready for the weird shit.
Oh, technology, man.
Yeah.
Blows up your ass or. All right, so there's a lot to take in that episode. First of all, uh, carrying on from last episode, the Pavans were in danger. The Klingons were coming to the thing because the Pavans thought that they could bring the Klingons and the humans together and broker a peace treaty. Uh, and they didn't apparently realize just how vicious the Klingons were and what kind of a danger they put themselves in. So the humans under Lorca's command are basically saying, okay, we need to defend these people. In the same breath, they say, okay, we need to figure out a way to defeat the Klingon cloaking technology, and they found a temporary solution, which was to beam over to the Klingon ship once it decloaked, place these beacons at the bow and the stern, and then do jumps around the ship once it recloaked to then position everything and then be able to see through the cloak. So obviously this isn't a long-term solution that will handle the cloaking technology forever, although might show other insights into other cloaked Klingon ships throughout the rest of the war. So then we've got Burnham and Tyler going over to the Klingon ship to place these devices that are kind of like homing beacons. And she comes across, or they come across, Admiral Cornwell, who has been tortured this entire time and held captive by L'Rell. And Tyler goes into a sort of PTSD type of trance where faced with L'Rell, and he explains this then later to Burnham, that she was his torturer. And we know this about L'Rell, that her subspecies or house of the Klingon Empire, they're deceivers, they are liars, they are essentially like the KGB or the CIA or the MI6 or whatever. These agents that are good at and learn all of their techniques for infiltrating and information and torturing and extracting information from prisoners and that sort of thing. So I put it in the chat so I wouldn't forget. That was 227 days he said he was being held captive by the Klingons. Now, we were getting flashbacks there from Tyler that L'Rell, in torturing him, uh, seemed to be doing some kind of medical experiments on him. We had a lot of whirring little saws and flashes of light. So first I wanted to ask, what did you get from those little flashback sequences that Tyler was remembering of his torture?
Well, I think everything was so brief that when I watched it, I just assumed it was only, like medical, manipulation or,
Right.
anything like that. So uh, that's kind of how I took it the first time I watched it.
Okay. And one of the other things that he mentioned there is that she seemed to have this sick, maybe almost romantic or sexual fascination with him. He didn't really go into a lot of detail, but he's going to talk about this a little bit further in upcoming episodes when he starts to open up to Burnham a little bit more as their relationship develops, and and talk a little bit more about how that was the relationship between Laurel and Tyler. But one thing I wanted to note here is that Tyler, if he is showing signs of PTSD, he's showing some of the most severe case of that. Like, even though he's a trained Starfleet officer, he's in the middle of a extremely important mission, severe uh, uh, atmosphere and everything surrounding him, and he just shuts down in the middle of the battlefield.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to imagine what kind of actual damage was done to his psyche in order to go, have that kind of long-lasting effect. And that maybe makes sense, being in Klingon imprisonment for 227 days. But I found that interesting that maybe that was just a part of like the way the story played out or that, but that he had that kind of severe reaction because of the PTSD. And Cornwell immediately recognized that and said, Burnham, you got to go on with your mission. So she does, and then we come to the next part, which is Stamets being seduced basically by Lorca by the scientific aspect of it into making 132 rapid successive jumps, and the extreme physical toll that had on him, knowing that that it was already having a negative effect on his brain matter prior to that. And then we see more of the relationship between Stamets and Dr. Culver, and how that's playing out, and the fact that he's now saying he's ready to retire after the Ship of the Dead is destroyed, and he's going to do one more jump, and then that's it. And also the fact that Burnham now has closure a little bit on taking out the person who killed Captain Georgiou, taking out the person who's been perpetuating this war, which is Kor or Cole, and now the Ship of the Dead is destroyed, and maybe this is like the beginning of the end with the Klingon War, and that she started and now she's finishing it. And then finally, at the end, we have Stamets going into some kind of almost catatonic state. He's certainly not conscious of anything that's going on in the real world. He's in his own mind, and his eyeballs have turned white, and now he's talking about millions of permutations and everything else, and he can see it all. So the first thing that comes to my mind is something that you guys said in chat, and that it feels almost like a season finale. Like, we've come up to this point now with this overarching story arc of the Klingon War, how it started, and now it feels like it's ending. So, what are your thoughts that they're putting this in this episode, seeing as how we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more episodes in the season?
I kind of like it. I think that it's, the normal thing is to end the season with a big blowout episode and explosions and fight scenes and all that. I like that it's in the middle, and knowing that we are going to take that turn in another direction, it kind of like ties up storylines and puts a neat little bow on it. I like that they put it in the middle.
Now, granted, we've both seen this before, but
Hmm.
you're basically saying that you feel they're trying to tie this up so that they can start a different aspect of this for the rest of season one.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Um, I would say yes, I get that. But if you don't know what's going on with this, like if you're seeing this for the first time, or let's say you're not a Star Trek fan at all and you haven't seen this kind of thing before, to me it's almost like you're waiting for this story arc to end, and yet we've got a whole new thing that's coming up here. And maybe that's not the best way to do that. Now, we'll go against the standard and say, if you haven't seen this, there's going to be some spoilers here, but there are hints and Easter eggs and things like that all throughout all the episodes that we've seen thus far, except for I think the first two. So episodes 3 through 9 that we've just seen, there are so many little hints in that as to what is now coming in the rest of season 1, that once you go back and you watch it again, you're like, oh my god, they told us it's gonna happen. The innuendos, such as in this episode we had Burnham saying to Captain Lorca, you wanted me on this ship, when he is balking at her going over to the Klingon ship to do this mission, and he says, and now I want you to stay here. So, obviously there's something else going on with Lorca that we have not seen yet. We don't know what exactly his motives are in this, because clearly Burnham and Tyler, as the most well-suited people to go over and do that mission, for some reason he doesn't want that to happen that way. He ends up acquiescing to it anyway. All right, so what other thoughts did you have on this episode?
That was something actually that I had written down, is that Jason Isaac, I think is
Yes.
the actor's name, is so perfectly cast as Lorca, because he plays that role on the fence, and you can't tell what his true motivation is.
Right.
You don't know if he like, he's pulling Stamets' chain, or if he is actually interested, or he just plays that so well. That was something that stands out to me pretty much every time he's on screen.
Yeah. And, and I think to a big degree, the way Jason Isaacs plays Lorca, he definitely comes off as things that you don't necessarily expect to come out of his mouth. Like that whole bit about him, talking about the exploration aspects of it. Does he actually care about that? Well, we don't
Yeah.
know, because
Hmm.
we can't see behind the surface of what Lorca presents himself as. Now, I think part of that was maybe addressed a little bit in Cornwell's concern for him back when they were, waking up. He wakes up and he pulls a gun on her, and she's like, "You need help," and he's like, "Please don't take my ship away from me." Um, so potentially there's some other things mentally going on with Lorca that have not been addressed yet. But we're definitely going to find out. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And Stamets at the end. Of course, I find it almost kind of cliche that he's like, just one more jump and then I'm done. And now, well, that's the fucking jump that kills him, practically.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot more that we still have to answer for in this episode. A lot of unresolved questions. and maybe even some brand new ones. You know, not the least of which is where the fuck are we
Where
now?
are
We,
we?
we, we can't figure out where we are. Saru was making it a point to say that he cannot find their position by standard methodology or standard methods. So at some point, it seems like they're going to have to turn to some unstandard methods to try to create a fix on their position, or do something else to figure out what the hell is going on, because we don't know where Stamets has dropped us off.
Or they can do one more jump.
Yeah, maybe we could
Just
just do
one
one
more.
more. Let's see if we can find another tardigrade or something. You know,
Right.
the surreal peril that the crew has been placed in now that Stamets seems to be out of commission. So, all right. Any other comments on that before we move on?
No, it was just a nerve-wracking episode. Even though that I know like what was gonna happen, it was still still nerve-wracking.
Yeah, a lot of tension built into the way the story played out in that episode. Um, and of course, going back and seeing it again. Uh, Now, I've actually seen this, I think, 4 times, because there was the first time I went through and I watched all the way through season 2. Then they came out with season 3, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back and watch this again. And I think I got, I don't know, maybe 6 episodes in, or this far, and I'm like, yeah, I got other shit to do. And then they came out with season 4, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta watch this
Over.
again now. And yeah, no, that didn't happen either. So that's part of the reason for the podcast. I'm not even drunk. Podcast is forcing me to go through this one by one, because out of all the new stuff that Paramount and CBS have produced in the last 6 years, I still haven't seen a lot of that. I haven't
Yeah.
seen what just came out, Strange New Worlds. I haven't seen half of season 3 and season 4 of Discovery. I haven't seen season 2 of Picard. I haven't seen season 2. Well, no, season 2 of Lower Decks is coming out in August, and I haven't seen any of Prodigy. So there's a lot that I haven't seen as well. That when we get to that, it's going to be just as new for me as it is for you. So yeah. All right, let's move on then to episode 10, Despite Yourself. See you back in a bit. All right. So our hard left turn into chaos is now complete, and we have figured out where we are, and that is the mirror universe that has been visited many times in the past. First time in the original series, and they mentioned a little bit later the Defiant, which started the whole scenario of that somehow this Constitution class ship, the Defiant, was pulled into the mirror universe, and that was also later talked about in the series Enterprise. There's a 2-part episode at the end of Enterprise where they visit the mirror universe, and it's all about the Defiant. And then several times on Deep Space Nine, they made incursions into and out of the mirror universe. Never addressed it in TNG or Voyager, but they decided to address it here. So we've got the mirror universe. We didn't necessarily know if it was the mirror universe exactly until Burnham started talking about the data that was recovered, uh, stating that this was, the Terran Empire that we know and love, all the way back from the original series, and describing for uh, the first time what exactly the Terran Empire is like. Now, we've had certain descriptions and things like that, like in the original series episode, Spock was, or rather the mirror universe, Spock with the little goatee was describing a little bit about the Terran Empire, but we never really got a true sense of what everybody was like. Just that they were very aggressive, very angry, um, and things like that. So, what are your thoughts? What do you of what you know so far about the Mirror Universe and the Terran Empire?
Well, from the original series, like my understanding of it was more of it was just like evil alter egos. So I think this mirror universe they're trying to display here is a little more advanced, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more well thought out, as opposed to being just like an alternate evil side. There's rationale behind their decisions and their aggression and their lack of like decency.
Right. Now, something that comes a little bit into play here. I'm a big fan of what's known as the Shatnerverse, and that is the 12, either 9 or 12 book series that I think it's 9, that William Shatner wrote, that were the continuing adventures of Captain Kirk beyond the movie Generations. And he.
Wait a minute. He died in Generations.
Yeah, but they brought him back to life again.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, Captain Kirk can't have continuing adventures if he dies in Generations,
Oh
right?
yeah. Like, how's that work?
Oh, it's convoluted and very, uh, shall we say, stereotypical of the ego of William Shatner. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of the series, not because of Captain Kirk coming back, but because of all of the details across the entire Star Trek universe that William Shatner tied into the storyline he created across 9 books. And to me, it's a fabulous series. And he delves into that a lot because I think at least 2 of the 9 books deal with the mirror universe, and not only an incursion into the mirror universe, but dealing with these characters very closely, very detailed like. And of course, there's other books that have dealt with it. One of the first science fiction books I ever picked up was called In a Mirror Darkly, which was a or no, I'm sorry, it's called Dark Mirror, and that was the first novel that was created talking about the Next Generation crew going into the mirror universe and how they dealt with that. So I picked up details on just, the minute nature of everything that was going on in the mirror universe prior to ever seeing any of this stuff, either Enterprise, where they explored it in a 2-part episode, or this now, where we're now utilizing the rest of season 1 of Discovery to exploring the mirror universe, basically, or at least a good portion of it.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. Is you're absolutely correct. Now we're getting a much more detailed look at it, and more so than that, the psychology behind it. Lorca was talking about the fear uh, that these people constantly live in. Because they're always looking for the next knife in their back. They're always watching out for whatever's going to stop them from succeeding, and that's a regular occurrence in this universe. Is you ascend the chain of command by killing your superior officer and taking their place. It's almost kind of like a conquest type deal where they were making this analogy for things that have happened in our human history where everything was conquest, and that's the way that you supposedly succeeded in life, was to be more aggressive in that nature. And also the interesting thing about it, that the psychology that now the people that are almost instantly being thrust into the wolf's den in order to try to create a successful mission, not only getting themselves back to their own universe, but saving everybody in the Federation and their universe, because they've got the intel on the Klingons that's going to win the war. And without Discovery, the Federation is going to be at a huge disadvantage. Um, so I think the pinnacle of that was Burnham, who, we said this back in our first episode, we were going to see Connor again. Well, here he is. Burnham standing in the brig in the first, or actually the second episode of Discovery, watching Connor being ripped away from the force field and into the vacuum of space and dying before her eyes. And this was a respected and honorable colleague of hers, and having to deal with the pain of that among everything else that the war was causing. Now leading up to this, where she has to kill him in order to survive. And I was trying to think to myself, what kind of psychology, what kind of emotions was Burnham feeling having to do that? What do you think?
I mean, I think in the moment it's like probably that fight or flight. You're just you got to do anything to survive that. But I think the aftermath is what's gonna really mess with her psyche on that.
You could see the anguish like creep down her face as soon as she realized what she had just done.
Yeah.
And in that capacity, I think that was extremely well acted, that scene. How
Hmm.
she, you can see the, not the terror, but that like you said, flight or fight, the adrenaline, and she's just like wide eyed. Oh my God, I gotta kill this guy, and then as soon as the deed is done, the anguish just washing over her face. So that was very well done. And on a broader scale, all of the people now having to fill these roles, they spend quite a bit of time, Lorca, talking about how they had to adapt in the mirror universe and, become essentially the ISS Discovery. So, did you have any more thoughts on that whole aspect of it?
Well, yeah, it's one thing to look the part. Anybody can like put on a different costume, change their hair, change the way they look, but to act the part is what is going to be interesting to see them struggle with. We already see Tilly struggling with like her anxiety and like
Yeah.
trying to be strong and be confident, and she's like, what the heck, hell, hold your horses, you know?
Well, that initial thing, but then at the end, she really holds her own. I mean, she's got
Oh
that
yeah,
that
she
command
did
and
step
snap
into
in her
it.
voice, and
Hmm. But yeah, I think that's really cool. It's one thing to do the look, but you gotta walk.
right. And that reminds me of that Enterprise or Next Generation book, Dark Mirror, that I remember in that Geordie LaForge, who is such a mild mannered character, struggling so greatly being on the Mirror Enterprise. And having to deal with these people that were so cutthroat, and eventually he fails and gets found out, and they put him in the torture chamber and all that. But yeah, there's probably definitely something to be said about somebody who is not only a mild-mannered person, but just a good person in general, being faced with this version of them that's just completely and utterly evil, and how they would deal with that psychologically. So that's one thing I've always liked about, no matter how cheesy it may get, anytime we visit the mirror universe, the psychological aspects are off the wall.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple more things that were a little more minor before we get to the major stuff. At the beginning of the episode, Tyler comes on the bridge and Saru is speaking, and they made a point of showing his threat ganglia descending and him appearing to understand that somebody is a threat. And oh, here's Tyler right here. You know, um, I find it interesting that never happened before this episode. Like, Saru's been
Yeah,
in
I feel like
proximity with Tyler many times, but it only has occurred now.
Tyler is like at the peak of his instability, I guess, and like and maybe that's what he's sensing. Saru is feeling that Tyler is hitting a breaking point, and we clearly see Tyler just straight out kill the doctor,
Right.
and then nobody even knows,
Nobody knows about it yet.
and they're just
except
like,
for
okay, we're just
except
moving
for
on.
Stamets, and he's off in La La Land.
Right.
Okay, so another minor thing that's related to that, Stamets, who clearly was speaking about Tyler when he said it the first time, the enemy is here, and then now that Tyler killed Dr. Culver, saying it again, the enemy is here. So the other thing that Stamets has been repeating in this quasi-Como state is referring to the palace. So the first time he said that, he said something to the effect of, oh my God, it's a palace, like in awe, and then that hit the hilt just before Tyler kills Dr. Culver, and he says, snaps upright and says, don't go in the palace. So we need to find out what the palace is. Because no matter what Stamets' condition, apparently he's got the fix on the information we need.
Yeah. Well,
And,
yeah, and we saw his eyes unfog for just a
mhm,
minute there, and he was coherent, and then back into it. So
right. Just long enough to let Culver know something that wasn't helpful, apparently. Or
right,
helpful
and then
enough.
he ignored.
Yeah. Um, and the other aspect before we get to the big stuff of um, the Defiant, or the Discovery, in that whole kind of talkover spiel where Lorca was, saying we have to become these people. I thought it was interesting they had the couple of things showing how they physically altered Discovery to be the ISS Discovery, changing the hull etchings, and you see the Terran Empire logo on the floor of the bridge, and stuff like that. Was there anything else you noticed that really stuck out in your mind with that?
No, not really with that one. I mean, they obviously had to change it so it's the ISS because that would be a dead giveaway.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and then they changed everybody's insignia and that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. So the elephant in the room is that Tyler kills Dr. Culver, and it's one of those oh fucking shit moments. Like, especially if you've never seen this before, and maybe you can see this with the foreshadowing with Tyler becoming more unstable in that. But this comes directly on the heels of Culber saying that it appears, instead of an underlying personality being suppressed, that a personality has been laid over top of what the person truly is. So that, along with the medical side of it, that there was scar tissue adjacent to every single organ and bone in his body, such as they splayed open his arms to make his bones in his arms and his legs shorter. Okay? So we've gotten in these flashbacks that Laurel definitely did some medical procedures on Tyler. We've assumed all along that this is part of his torture. Well, and he assumed all along this was part of his torture, as did everybody else, the doctors and everything. But now we're getting hints that there might not be just torture there. There might be something completely different, or something that nobody expected, and something certainly that the crew of the Discovery is not necessarily ready to handle. They if they haven't seen anything like this before, or they don't have the experience to figure out what exactly has happened to Tyler that we don't know about. But we do know now that apparently he is so unstable that he's willing to kill a member of the crew, possibly because there is a secret involved with what happened with his torture. And then we can go back to the little spot that he had with Laurel in the brig, where he opens the door and she apparently has this kind of hold over him. She says the Klingon prayer, and he goes into this alternate voice that sounds vaguely familiar, and he starts, flashing back and all sorts of weird shit, and loses time, and then all of a sudden he snaps out of it and goes and is approaching her and saying, "What the hell did you do to me?" and this and that. And Laurel is shocked by this action, and she says, well, the prayer should have done what it was supposed to do, and it didn't. So something has gone wrong with whatever Laurel has as a hold over Tyler. So what did you see in that whole scene?
I mean, I kind of interpret it as like she's got the ability. She's kind of brainwashed him, and she's got the ability to basically kind of mind control him, because in the episode prior, when he wakes up after he had the dream about her, it was almost like she summoned him to the brig, and she can
Right.
tell him, oh, let me out, and he'll do it. And so he's got that inability to think or act for himself when she's got him under her control.
At the very least, it seems like our new security officer is compromised to the hilt.
Definitely.
Like he's not able to control his actions. That's twice now he's out in the worker bee and he gets PTSD again
Mhm.
and suffers from that. He's able to overcome it in that moment, but um, twice now he's had those episodes, both when the crew was relying on him, and then he just goes up and turns off the force field to Laurel's cell, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing, Tyler? You know, and I certainly see, and of course, leading up to the fact that he kills the doctor, you know, obviously there's this whole other thing going on with Tyler that we don't even know about, that goes far beyond being held in Klingon captivity for 227 days and being tortured by a person whose entire house is devoted to torture and information. We have not seen the end of this. There is definitely more coming with Tyler, and I'm sure we're going to be thrown even further out into chaos with that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I kind of, know the way the story goes, and I don't know that they've really done anything quite like that in anything that I've seen.
You
Not
mean
only
like
just Star Trek.
a saboteur, wolf in sheep's clothing types deal?
Yeah, just to this extent, with the tissues and the scarring and the, changing the length of your bones, like that's
Yeah.
some intense shit.
And we still have no understanding of why. Now
Hmm.
we're about to find out, but so far they have not given us any clues as to what are Tyler's motives. So we've got a couple of different things here that are compromising the Discovery crew from being successful. We've got Lorca, who doesn't seem like he's always telling the truth, or at the very least, he's got this very good facade that he's hiding things or hiding his true motives or does not necessarily have the best intentions of the crew at heart, or maybe even the Federation. We've got Tyler, who has now just proven himself to be either a saboteur or an undercover agent for the Klingons, or something else is going on that we haven't even conceived of yet. Uh, then we've got everything that the crew is now having to go to, the lengths they are having to go to survive in the mirror universe and not be found out for who they are. Um, so the odds are really stacked against these folks.
Say so.
All right. Any other thoughts on that episode before we finish up here? Captain
I think
Killy.
that is, yeah, I think, yeah, she's awesome.
Is that Mary Wiseman that plays
I
Tilly?
think that's her name. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see here. I think that's her name, Mary Wiseman. Doo-doo-doo.
Mm, yes,
Okay.
Mary Wiseman.
Mary Wiseman, and she's just like so many other people in this series, a new addition to the Star Trek universe. Um,
Mm.
One of the things I think I because I saw some of the just like The Walking Dead did way back when you had the Talking Dead show afterwards.
Yeah.
When Star Trek Discovery started, they were doing a after talking show that I think is still available on Paramount Plus, and it was just
Mhm.
a host sitting down with some of the actors and some of the writers and that. Like Jonathan Frakes directed this episode that we just saw, and I
Oh,
think which by the way, any episode directed by Jonathan Frakes is just off the wall fabulous.
yeah. I
Um,
missed that entirely.
yeah, so like in the After Trek episode, I think that's what they call it. They had Jonathan Frakes on, and they were interviewing him. I saw one of them where they had Mary Wiseman on, and they were talking a little bit about her anxiety and how she's portraying this person that is just so anxious about everything, and the way she deals with that is just talk, 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 and uh, how she has to like push herself into that role because she's not normally that anxious. And the same thing now portraying something that is overly confident, the complete opposite of the character she's been playing this whole time,
Yeah.
which is also the sign of a great actor.
Oh, yeah, she's got some chops for sure.
Mhm. So far, aside from, I mean, Burnham, what's her name that plays Burnham? I
Oh, Sonequa Martin Green.
yes, Iniqua Martin Green. I think she's a decent actor, but I don't think she's a great actor per se. Like, there's many spots where she just, it's kind of bland. Like the part in the turbo
Yeah.
lift in this episode was absolutely fantastic. I thought she did a great job, but there's other parts where like, oh, Burnham's crying again. Uh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that cast was more of a, notoriety because of The Walking Dead, and the
Mhm.
name was recognizable, and it was like, oh, we got a big pull here with getting her.
Well, and we all, I was big into The Walking Dead at the time, and I definitely, they had like part of her when she died on that show, uh, saying that she was sad to be leaving The Walking Dead, but she had a big project in the works, and this was it. Um, you know, so yeah, that's definitely a part of it, the notoriety. But otherwise, I think there's quite a bit of really good young talent on this crew, or not even young talent. I mean, we've seen Jason Isaacs before in a few things. We've seen Sonequa Martin Green in a few things, um, and even a few of the others. But we you've never necessarily seen Doug Jones that plays Saru in this type of a role. And I've read a couple of pieces and seen a couple of interviews with him on how he created Saru and things that came about with this character, about how like he's already 6'1" or 6'2", something like that, and then he puts on these stilt shoes so that he's walking basically like a woman that's walking in high heels.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's got this walk where he has to put his arms behind his back almost to keep his balance as he's walking in these things, you know. And that creates a part of Saru's personality that maybe otherwise wouldn't be there. Um, but all in all, I think the people that have been cast in this do a pretty excellent job of the acting. We're going to see uh, over time and into the second season, a lot of the minor characters start to play a bigger role as they start really exploring those characters. The two ladies that are up front, the navigator and the ops position, I can't even think of their names offhand, and the black guy that is the communications officer, Lieutenant Arium, I remember her name, that is got the bionic facade there, and we'll
Oh
find out
yeah.
like how she gets that and everything that deals with that aspect of it. And even further, in a little bit more into Stamets' history, and we even get a new character next season. So a lot of interesting stuff going on. So, all right. Anything else before we wrap up here?
I think that's about it.
Okay. All right. So next week, our sixth episode is going to be Discovery Season 1, Episode 11, The Wolf Inside, and Episode 12, Vaulting Ambition. And we've only got 3 more episodes then after that in this season. So
We're
rapidly
almost there.
tearing through the
Yeah.
Star Trek universe. Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you later. Adios.